Victor doesn't like to be proved wrong. In chapter 3, he heads off for university in Ingolstadt and is met by a Monsieur Kremp, who derides Victor's previous studies, saying, "Every instant you have wasted on those books is utterly and entirely lost. You have burdened your memory with exploded systems and useless names." Perhaps Victor feels a little cramped by Kremp, disillusioned that having escaped his home, sought adventure in another country and set out to expand his mind, he finds himself being held back. There's certainly a sense that as a male character, he seeks to escape, I think, from the female-dominated domestic world of his home. Look at how he says, "I had often, when at home, thought it hard to remain during my youth cooped up in one place, and had longed to enter the world and take station among other human beings." The word cooped is interesting. On the surface, he is of course upset about the death of his mother in this chapter, but is there also a sense in which he's relieved to escape the coop, to be free to leave the mother hen and achieve something that will bring him status and respect in his own right? As in so much of the novel, Shelley focuses on contrasts a lot in this chapter. Here, the focus is on how self-centred and self-absorbed Victor is in comparison to his mother and Elizabeth. Look at how Elizabeth responds when Victor's mother dies, for instance. We're told that she indeed veiled her grief and strove to act the comforter to everyone. Victor, on the other hand, says that he desired to see my sweet Elizabeth in some degree consoled. But if we look at his response to Elizabeth's entreaties to write often, he falls far short. In chapter 5, there's perhaps a hint of irony when Henry asks Victor if he would consider writing his family a letter at last. And Victor says, "Is that all, my dear Henry? How could you suppose that my first thought would not fly towards those dear, dear friends whom I love and who are so deserving of my love?" Well, maybe because you haven't written to them for years, Victor? To be fair to Victor, though, I think Shelley gives us another way of reading this chapter and the behaviour of Victor in the subsequent ones. He becomes completely, obsessively, fixatedly immersed in what he does. Studying, reading, collecting pieces of corpses from graveyards, that sort of thing. In chapter 4, he reflects on this fanatical single-mindedness when he says, "I continually sought the attainment of one object of pursuit and was solely wrapped up in this." Why? What's at the root of this obsessive mindset? Well, I think from a psychological perspective, Shelley may be presenting Victor as a victim of trauma. His mother has just died and he immediately leaves home to live in a foreign country. Perhaps this compulsion he feels to immerse himself in something is some sort of compensatory behaviour. Let's return to chapter 3 and look at how Victor leaves home to go to uni. He says this, "I threw myself into the chaise that was to convey me away and indulged in the most melancholy reflections. I, who had ever been surrounded by amiable companions, continually engaged in endeavouring to bestow mutual pleasure, I was now alone." Now, the word melancholy is interesting for a start. Now we just think of it as meaning sad, but at the time it would have had connotations of depression, mental illness. Victor admits that he's leaving an environment in which he has been constantly surrounded by people loving him, and then uses that short clause standing on its own at the end of the sentence. I was now alone. He feels completely isolated. His mother is dead and he's left behind all his family and friends. Can Victor's subsequent behaviour, perhaps, be accounted for as a post-traumatic response? In some weirdly morbid way, perhaps he encounters death, so seeks to create life. Ultimately, though, we come back to Victor wanting to achieve something with his life, his lofty ambitions and romantic aspirations. Look at the language he uses when he says, "So much has been done," exclaimed the soul of Frankenstein. "More, far more will I achieve. Treading in the steps already marked, I will pioneer a new way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world the deepest mysteries of creation. Talking about his soul in the third person is dramatic enough, but look at the tripartite sequence. I will pioneer a new way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world. The verbs here, pioneer, explore, unfold, are all about discovery, and discovery of things beyond logical, rational, scientific thought. He might at first not seem a typically romantic figure as a scientist, but in fact his aspirations are romantic, I think, in terms of the focus on the new, the unknown, and the mysterious. The chapter ends with the sentence, "Thus ended a day memorable to me. It decided my future destiny." Shelley sets us up to think about another of the themes of the novel, fate. Who's to blame for Victor's actions? Is he responsible, or is he the victim of fate? What about the creature? Is he responsible for the deaths of all those people? Are Victor and the creature the way they are because of their upbringing, or is that just a cop-out to suggest that? Nature or nurture?